Ever hear a story and just think to yourself, what was this guy thinking?
Oh, yeah, all the time.
Well, that's what we're talking about today.
I'm interested.
So this is a really bizarre and really sad story out of Florida.
Okay.
And, we try to do these deep dives into some of these kind of current event stories that deal with crime or justice issues.
Right.
And this one is it's a head scratcher for sure.
Yeah.
So it starts with Hurricane Milton.
Oh, yeah, I remember that one.
Yeah, you remember that one, right?
Big one.
Big one.
Yeah, a lot of damage.
Yeah. It hit Florida's west coast on October 9th of this year, 2024.
Right.
And, hurricanes, obviously they do a lot of damage, immediate damage with wind and rain and flooding and all that.
Of course, that's what we all think about, right?
Yeah, but then there's all the kind of lingering effects.
Right, the after effects.
And one of the big ones is power outages.
Yeah, that's a huge one.
Yeah, and so Hurricane Milton knocked out power to something like 3.4 million people.
Wow, that's a lot of people.
Yeah, that's a ton of people, right? So you can imagine just the kind of widespread disruption that caused.
Absolutely. Think about it. No AC in Florida in October.
Oh, it's
Food spoiling in refrigerators, people relying on medical devices.
all that stuff, yeah. And it's not just the inconvenience,
Yeah.
right?
It's way more than that.
Like you said, people who need electricity for medical equipment,
Absolutely.
food going bad,
Yeah.
the heat. It's a very serious situation.
It is. It's a huge stressor.
Right. And so this is the backdrop for this really strange and sad story.
Oh.
So we've got this guy, 72-year-old John Burgos,
Okay.
lives in the area that was hit by the hurricane.
Uh-huh.
And like so many others, he's without power.
Okay.
So almost 3 days go by, he's still without power.
Wow. So the stress is building.
Yeah, exactly. And it's the middle of the night, October 12th, like 4 a.m.
Oh, man.
And reportedly he's been drinking.
Okay.
And for whatever reason, he just snaps.
This is where it gets scary.
Yeah. And he shoots his dog.
Oh, no.
Yeah, his dog named Flick.
That's awful.
Yeah, it's a really, really awful story. And, it's hard to understand what would drive someone to do something like that.
Well, I mean, we have to consider the context, right? Like you said, prolonged power outage.
Yeah.
Middle of the night, probably sleep deprived.
Right.
Add alcohol to the mix and people's coping mechanisms can really break down.
Yeah, I mean, clearly.
Yeah. And, it makes you wonder, too, like, what kind of support system did this guy have?
That's a good point.
Was there anyone he could turn to? Were there any resources available to him that he knew about?
Right. Were there services in place, to help people cope with, what they were going through?
Exactly.
Yeah. And so I think that's something that we can all kind of learn from this is like, when we think about preparing for a disaster, we think about, having, supplies and an evacuation plan and all that stuff.
Right. The practical stuff.
Right. But we also need to be thinking about, our mental health and our emotional well-being and making sure that we have support systems in place.
Absolutely. And knowing where to turn for help if we need it.
Yeah. And that could be anything from, like you said, having a support network of friends and family.
Yeah, just someone to talk to.
To knowing, what mental health resources are available in the community.
Right. Or even just like a hotline you can call if you're feeling overwhelmed.
Exactly.
There are resources out there. We just need to make sure people know about them.
So like I said, it's 4 a.m. This guy's shot his dog.
Yeah. What happened next?
Well, this is where it gets even weirder.
Okay.
So instead of calling 911 immediately.
He didn't.
No. He goes to his neighbor's house.
What? Why?
Well, he claims he couldn't find his phone.
Really?
Yeah. So he goes to the neighbors. And only then does he call 911.
That's so strange.
Right.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, I think I shot my dog.
Oh, my God.
It's just this really bizarre delayed reaction.
It really is. I mean, what do you make of that?
I don't know. It's hard to say.
Yeah.
Maybe he was in shock or confused.
It's possible.
Or maybe he was trying to minimize what he'd done,
Yeah, maybe the alcohol was still a factor too.
Yeah. I mean, who knows what was going on in his head, but it's just a strange detail.
It is, yeah.
So anyway, the deputies, obviously, they rush to the scene.
Man, the dog.
They take Flick to an emergency animal hospital.
Okay.
But unfortunately, it's too late. The dog doesn't make it.
Oh, man. That's just so sad.
Yeah, it's just a really tragic ending all around. And Sheriff Wayne Ivey, he was furious about this whole thing.
I bet.
And rightfully so.
Yeah.
He called it one of the most unnecessary things that could have ever happened.
Wow.
And he was really adamant that, the power company wasn't to blame for this.
Well, yeah, of course not.
Yeah, like this guy was trying to say, oh, I was stressed out because of the power outage and I was drinking and
Oh, come on. You can't blame the power company for your actions.
exactly. And Sheriff Ivey basically said, look, don't be blaming other people for you killing your dog.
Good for him.
Yeah, he said you had evil in your heart. You were mad, you couldn't control your emotions, and you were drunk and you killed your dog.
Wow, that's a powerful statement.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah, it's a reminder that, we're all responsible for our own actions, ultimately, no matter how stressful the situation might be.
Yeah, so Burgos is now facing some very serious charges.
Like what?
So animal cruelty, using a firearm under the influence, shooting in a dwelling.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and he's being held without bond.
So he's in big trouble.
Yeah, I mean, and rightfully so.
Yeah.
I mean, this was a really senseless act of violence.
That really was.
And it's just, it's just a reminder that we need to be taking mental health seriously.
Absolutely.
And making sure that people have the resources they need to cope with difficult situations.
And not just individuals, right? Like,
Okay.
we need communities to be prepared to support people who are struggling.
Yeah, exactly. Like, we need to be thinking about this stuff before the next disaster hits.
Right.
Not just in the aftermath. So, yeah, it's just a really sad story. And, we don't know all the details.
Of course not.
But it's just a reminder that, things can go really wrong when people are under a lot of stress.
And that we need to be prepared to help each other.
Absolutely.
Maybe this whole thing could have been prevented if this guy had known where to turn for help.
Yeah, maybe he just needed someone to talk to,
Yeah.
or some kind of outlet for his frustration.
Right. Or some resources to help him cope with the stress of the situation.
Exactly. And so I think that's the real takeaway here is like, how can we as individuals and as communities do a better job of supporting each other?
Yeah, that's the big question.
Yeah, and making sure that people have the resources they need to get through tough times.
Absolutely. And that's something we all need to be thinking about.
Yeah, because, you never know when you might be the one who needs help.
That's true for all of us.
So, yeah, it's a lot to think about.
It is.
But hopefully, this deep dive has kind of shed some light on, the importance of mental health and the need for, community support and all that.
Yeah, hopefully it'll get people talking and thinking about how they can be more prepared.
And, maybe even save a life.
Absolutely.
So thanks for joining us for this deep dive, and we'll see you next time.
See you later.